All right. This is Tim with the Arc Tactical Bold Move podcast, and I'm sitting down with Lou from the Everyday American podcast and Forge Ferocity. And, um, you're kind of a staple in my life now, which is awesome.
Yeah,
And
thanks, man.
so
You too.
uh,
Thanks.
it's just crazy because, we talked about it a couple episodes ago when we did our group Guns and Keys cast. And prior to that, we met each other about a year ago doing stuff with Guns and Geese again, but just the connections that we're able to build. And for those of you that don't know, Lou lives in New Jersey, and you could probably tell that from his accent. Um, just in case you're inept, there you go. But Lou is such a good dude. Has his own podcast called The Everyday American. That's a very unique job. And that job kind of sparked what today's topic is, and that is, as we approach 9/11, just some reflection on that date. And everybody has. We were just talking about it prior to recording. Everybody has a story on it, but I think that there's some uniqueness because you are very, very geographically close to that, but also. You were like 11 years old when that happened, man. And I
Fourth
wasn't.
grade.
Yeah. So with that, I don't know. I think we should start out just telling the audience what you do and how that kind of ties into 9/11 every year for the last,
Yeah.
23
Uh,
years.
yeah, 8 years. Well, 8 years now, but more directly 8 years. But yeah, since that, about 23 or 24 years, unfortunately. Yeah. So just a little about me. You said I'm from New Jersey. Been here my whole life. 40 miles from the city, and I started a regular kid, doing my thing. Never really good at school, so after I got out of high school, tried college and got right into fixing things, mechanics, stuff like that. And it's kind of how my career progressed, whether I liked it or not. Uh, Mechanics and fixing things was kind of my nature. So got into that, worked for a large construction company, and started working for a big agency out here. I don't know if I'm not going to say it just in case, but you'll be able to figure it out. Quick Google search. Um, Started working for a large agency out here in the tri-state about 8 years ago. And they're heavily involved with 9/11 ceremonies, World Trade Center, all the airports in the area, tri-state airports, which are JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, stuff like that. And yeah, basically what I do as a mechanic for this agency, I do a lot of. I have become the guy that's done a lot of maintenance, repairs. I build vehicles, all lighting, emergency systems, special modifications, gun racks, the whole nine for the police department, ESU, emergency services, counterterrorism unit. And it's become something that I actually really enjoy, even though I get frustrated for many other reasons. Not any of the guys' fault, but and I kind of love it. Admittedly, I do, and it's turned into something that I'm naturally good at, that I naturally enjoy, and that gets to Tim's point of this week coming up starts to get very hectic for us with ceremonies and dignitaries coming in, and I'm not a police officer. I'm not a frontline person, but I know the guys very well at this point, working with them for the last 6 years. They're all good friends of mine. I care a lot about them, and they keep me in the loop a lot of what's going on. And I do my best to help them, even with the simplest stuff that comes in that they need to get rocking and rolling. So um, it's fun in a way. I guess the more I think about it, I am kind of like a little back end piece to helping things run smooth as they can. I mean, I am not the only one. There's a lot of guys I work with. It's over 100 other mechanics. I seem to have become the specialist in kind of the emergency lighting type things, especially some of the special equipment our counterterrorism unit has. Um, That's like apparently some of the stuff we have. I had to talk to some 3-letter agencies for some clearances
Wow.
because of uh, programs that are involving government agencies, special funding stuff. Just because of the area we're in, it's kind of like testing type things. That they try to roll out to the rest of the U.S. So it's pretty cool to be involved with. It's the type of place where if you don't put any effort into anything, you're just going to get the bare minimum out of. But because when I got there, I was a young guy in an old guy's shop, guys getting ready to retire. We had this new lighting system come out. I was willing to learn it, and I became the, for lack of a better term, the unofficial expert. So like it was just luck of the draw type stuff. Just the way it all worked out, and here we are now.
That's
I get to
awesome.
work. I get to work 6/12s next week, so that'll be fun.
Oh my gosh. I don't miss those days. So when you became like, it sounds like you kind of fell into being a mechanic, right? Because there wasn't a lot anything going on. Just trying to make your way through. Did you have any desire to be in this specialized field in that, like working with emergency services?
Um, no. Now that I'm doing it, I actually enjoy it more. I would actually, if I could, pursue it further for much more specific type things. Um, but yeah, when I started that, I was 18. I just turned 19, and that was in 2010. And I told my mom I didn't want to go to college, and she was like, "You're out of your mind." It was like very. It wasn't. It was very odd to do back then. I guess more so now. And I stuck with it. I stuck with my gut, and uh, not to go super long into it, but basically I just decided to do my thing. And by sticking with what I knew I wanted to do, it allowed me kind of to just naturally fall into these kind of moments that pop up that allow me to kind of become a specialist, so to say. And prior to working here, I worked at this construction company I was really young. I was like 20 to 24, and we were working like crazy there too. But I became without even thinking about it, I became a specialist over there too, working for certain equipment. But it's just the way it worked out. And then when I was told about this job, uh, it was the last thing I expected. I mean, it's a relatively could be a relatively easy job, but no. To answer your question is no. It just happened, and now that I know more about it, because at that time when I made this decision, I didn't know what I was getting into, Tim. To be honest, my dad had just passed, so I knew I wanted to stay close to home, um, which was going to be good, for the family,
Sure.
for the immediate future, and then it just ended up. Yeah, I say this all the time. It's like truthfully, my heart wants to be like a police officer or some of these guys that I am helping, SWAT, counterterrorism, whatever. My heart wants to be there, but my brain just took me in the direction that's something that I'm just naturally good at it. It's a fact. So, um, kind of just rolled with that, and I think the most important part in me becoming the specialist, even though I don't have an actual title, is because every day when I went to work, I actually cared and like wanted to learn. And I think when my bosses saw that, it just kept I kept getting that type of stuff. And I've since been involved with ordering uh, specifications on some our new armored vehicles.
Wow.
I've been involved in helping specify specs for they're trying out these new drone trucks. It's like a truck, they pull out a slide and a drone pops out, and I'm like,
That's pretty rad.
whatever, yeah. But I have you know gained trust of people that trust my opinion to say what makes sense and what doesn't. And that was all just by coincidence and chance, and just me uh, being someone that cares and puts effort into what they're doing. And so here we are. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I do enjoy it. It gets frustrating, but I do really enjoy it.
That's awesome because I mean, you're taking what could be almost a mundane job and
Oh yeah,
making it, a place of expertise, which is awesome.
and
And
that's the thing. It's I work for a private, non-private government agency, so you know it's very easy to just go in there. And this is the thing. It's very easy to just go in there, do what you have to do, bare minimum, change your oil, and walk out, and that's fine. You're going to get paid the same amount as me.
right,
So
right.
that's just a fact, right? That's the way it is. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm very well aware of that. But the difference is with that and that mentality is you don't actually gain anything else out of that. You just come, you do what you have to do, and you leave. Whereas I've learned so much of the specialty stuff to the point where I've been asked by others, which I cannot do because of contracts and stuff like that. But I've learned a specialty on a lot of things on someone else's dime that's now a huge skill set, if that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You're there. I would imagine that in the world of what you do, there aren't too many specialists out there like that. And I don't think you should downplay it either, right? Because you're talking about lighting, and maybe to the average listener, that doesn't make any sense. The lights on a law enforcement or emergency medical vehicle are what keep them safe. It's what gets people to move out of the way. It's what lets people know that there's danger ahead. When the lights go on, those officers are going out there to go handle some business. And if that's not working, you're putting them in danger, you're putting the public in danger. There are huge ramifications for that. And it could even get, even more detailed of, how does it work? Because a lot of those, when you buy those lights, um, there's a bunch of different configurations and different things that you can do. And so it is such a critical component. But I know that's not all you do is the lighting, but it sounds like you fell into it. There's just so much that goes into a car like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking police cars, when I first started in the business, I was in support services, and I was the guy that would drive cars over to mechanics like yourself
Okay.
and help. Hey, this is what it needs to do. We're, working with people like that. I did that for a couple of years and just really gained a respect for what it takes to go into something like that. And people look at, the Hollywood and say, hey, well, them getting to the scene is like an afterthought. We don't care about what that character does during the ride there, but it's so critical for safety. But also, um, when I call 911, I want them there now. Like that, all
Yeah.
bad things have happened. I want them there now. And to get them there as fast as possible, there's so many different hands that go into that, and yours being a major part of that. So thank you for what you do. There are so many unsung heroes in the law enforcement world that people would never know is a thing, but it is because, again, we can't get help there fast enough. We always use the saying that when seconds count, law enforcement's minutes away, right?
Yeah.
And so facilitating them getting there is essentially what you're doing, on a very technical level. So it's super cool. I'm kind of a nerd that way too. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I mean, I don't feel like I do. I just do my job. I don't feel like I do anything. Like I said, I'm just doing my job. I'm glad it helps people out. The guys thank me all the time. I try to keep things moving as best I can for them, because as you can only imagine, the amount of red tape and things just for something simple is pretty sickening sometimes. It's like, oh man, this should be so simple. But um, yeah, man, I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics of the systems, but it has become, even in the time I've been doing it in the last about 6 or 7 years is when I've really been more directly hands-on with it. It has gotten very much more uh, detail oriented and complicated, to the point of lighting. It reacts. You could program a car now to do pretty much whatever you want whenever you want to do it. It's really getting that specific, to the point where I could write a program for a car that the lighting pattern is different from 10 to 20 miles an hour, 20 to 40 miles an hour, 40 to 90 miles an hour. You could have just, you don't even have to do anything. You'll just drive. The minute you hit 16 miles an hour, different light pattern.
Wow.
You get on scene now. You can get on scene now, and all the cars sync up together, and the patterns will exactly match from car to car. Rather than you've been on scene to where every car shows up and you can't even see what you're doing because there's so many lights going off. Well, now they have it so that the minute all the cars get on scene, the lighting patterns sync up. So this way it's not as distracting. I mean, the sirens alone, I mean, you could do all different types of tones. They get involved with that in the city a lot because there's a lot of different complaints due to siren sounds and how they, reflects off buildings. And so there's so many different things, integrated, through the lighting systems. Now you integrate all your takedown lights. When you pull a guy over, you turn all your lights down, your white lights, I guess you would call them, a lot of guys call them the white lights. That's all integrated into your lighting systems. Reverse lights, it's gun locks are integrated with built-in timers. I mean, some of them are even starting to do a thumb pad. Like,
wow.
You could open the trunk, pull your gun locker down, and there could be a thumb pad for like they'll put in like 10 officers. They're not going to limit it to just one, but it's getting really, and that's just the lighting I do. Some of the other stuff I don't really want to talk about is, there's some other systems we have that are only our agency has, and they're proprietary through government funded programs like DARPA.
Yeah.
And we have trucks driving around the city doing special detections type stuff. And we're the only ones in the country apparently doing it right now. It's like a big test program.
Wow.
And they get hits on stuff, and it's a little scary.
Wow.
But that's kind of a new thing we've been doing. I got involved with, again, coincidentally. Actually, funny story, jiu-jitsu mirrors life, right? Greg Anderson, shout out, always says it.
Yep.
I got mostly involved with this stuff because the lieutenant for the counterterrorism unit is a big jiu-jitsu guy.
That's awesome.
So we started talking, and he actually was coming over just for the lighting. We didn't even start talking yet. And we started talking, and I said something, one day, like, "Oh, I got murdered last night at jiu-jitsu," and he was like, and immediately just, like this, right? And he's a good friend of mine now. But now because of that, he's got me further into the weeds on some stuff. And he's getting me involved with some new builds. They got some new vans they want to build. So, like I said, I secretly love it. I've been to a lot of other facilities that do this. We don't build all of ours. I've been just starting to build the more specialized units. It's better done in-house. Our house, it's a little more under control. The quality is going to be better because I'll just be the one doing it, where I have a hand from A to Z. A lot of these big guys out by us, they have a production line basically, and quality is lost that way. I'm not saying they don't make a good product, but we've had a lot of issues that affect the guys and girls on the road. So yeah. I've had to fix a lot of those. So some of the really special stuff they're doing in-house with me and some of the guys that help me, that's been kind of cool because we haven't done in-house builds in like 30 years. So it's kind of nice to bring some stuff in and it's fun. I enjoy it. I would do more if I could. unfortunately, I don't get paid anymore for it, but gotta take the battles when you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the job still's got to get done, but
Yeah.
you bring up a couple of good points, and first of all, how you got there is really interesting because I've been thinking about this concept of what is purpose, right? And you were talking about, I could have been a cop, but my brain took me in a different way. And the way I'm kind of dissecting this idea of purpose is that it's where aptitude meets enthusiasm, right? You
Yeah.
have to be good at something in order for you to find that purpose. But I'm good at stuff that I do not care about. You know what I mean? So if you don't
Yeah.
also have that
Yeah.
enthusiasm, then it takes you nowhere, and vice versa. You can be really excited about something and suck at it, and that doesn't help either. And it looks like you have both aptitude and enthusiasm, and that's what's driving you right now. So that's awesome. The other
Yeah. I
thing,
call it. I call it like a blessing and a curse. Because uh, if you have aptitude and enthusiasm and you want to work for yourself, other than a few other things, you could do well because you love what you're doing and you're enthusiastic about it, right? So theoretically, you'd think the chart. It's you know the deal. You're doing it yourself. It gets disheartening sometimes when you take that scale and you spread it through everyone, you know, and that's just part of me getting some benefits, good benefits of working with a government agency, but I try to keep myself level-headed and telling myself that whether I do it for someone else or not, I'm the one that's still building the skills and has the skill, and that is transferable
yeah,
regardless. You know, and if someone chooses to come in every day and do bare minimum, that's on them. I don't fault them for it. I actually represent them. I'm a union rep. I'm a job steward. So, hey, do what you got to do.
yeah,
Whatever.
yeah, I get it.
Um, but I was fortunate enough that I learned early on that I have to do my best to uh, not fall into that hole and still kind of make sure I'm keeping myself crisp.
Yeah,
Because a good friend of mine also works for my agency, and on the outside, we were both working for these construction companies that were, we were nonstop. I mean, we were working all on the road, nonstop, fixing all kinds of equipment, and we were learning I mean, I almost learned something new every minute of the day. And then our joke is now that we're here, it's like, this is where good talent comes to die. And it's funny, but it's kind of sad to say at the same thing. And I remember we would joke around and say that. And I'd say, I don't want my talent to die. So I would found my way of learning something new, but still accelerating and propelling myself to just have a bit of an edge, I guess you could say.
well, I think over time purpose changes, right? Like
Yeah.
you can uh, get your skill set, you can build new skill sets, you can pour your life into whatever project that you have, and that's kind of where you are right now. But in 5 years, if you've done that and you've kind of reached the limit of how effective you are there, there's no stopping you because you already have that skill set that you can transfer other places. So I just think that's so cool, so cool. Um, One of the other things that you were talking about is just every little aspect that goes into it, and looking at it from the law enforcement point of view, there are so many tactics that we use, and we do guns and geese stuff together with a lot of firearm stuff involved in that, and a little bit of movement and all that. But every tactic that law enforcement uses, whether it's, hey, I'm going to approach from way down the block to go hear this DV or whatever, or there is a mechanism inside a vehicle that allows that to happen. There are so many different tasks that have to occur, and you have to kind of plan for most of those tasks because you don't get to do it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So there's just so much thought that goes into that. So um, you were talking about some of the different lighting patterns. What are some of the other things that are driving how your vehicles are set up these days? Are there anything new in the last 5 years that changes have been made, that type of thing?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, for the most part, I mean, we, as working for a large agency, they have a division. They call it, it's like the risk management division, and they kind of do a lot of testing on somebody's light patterns and stuff like that. They actually, we do some things that are overly fancy, but at the same time, our fleet does some of the more basic things also. We don't do any of that stuff. Like I was explaining, like how uh, you can do the light patterns differently from 10 to, we don't do anything like that at our agency, but I just know from becoming really good friends with our lighting rep, and who's a friend now, he kind of helps give me a lot of the ins and outs of a lot of this stuff that's getting more involved. And from my knowledge or what I know, which again I'm no expert, this is just me, my hands-on knowledge. Um, the systems haven't changed all that much in the last about 4-ish years. Probably about 5 years ago is when they really kind of took a leap, and that leap is they actually physically took the control head of the lighting system, and they actually had it tee into the onboard computer of any car, Tahoe, Explorer, F350, 150. And what it does is the lighting systems now are listening to what the OBD, we call it the OBD, is, that's the communication systems in every vehicle. It's called OBD. And that is now listening to the vehicle, and the lighting system is taking information in, and it knows everything that's happening, everything. It's only what you tell it you want it to listen for and get a reaction out of when the lighting pattern starts to really kind of come to life, not even including the red and blues.
Wow.
And it can do, I mean, every light head now, depending on what you do, every light head is now a 5-color. It's like what is that, a quad color? It's a 5-color light head. It'll do red, blue, white, green, and amber. At least the systems we use. So those colors are all in there. So now going into the lighting software, you can tell each individual light what color you want it to do, how you want it to do it, when you want it to do it, and it could do that all by listening to OBD. And that's how a lot of this stuff, you get these lights to react to your brake signal. To step on a brake, you might see the lights come on up top, over like a overhead bar, or you might see the blinker come on in an undercover car.
Wow.
It's that specific now. Other than that type of stuff, that was a big leap about 5 years ago. Other than that, now they're getting much more into the finer details. They're making the lights much, much smaller actually now, which is kind of cool. They draw way less power. It's all LED. So it's much, much less demand on the actual onboard, just your battery and your alternator, just in your way less of a demand. And it's pretty cool. You could, like I said, you could literally just about have it do whatever you want, whenever you want it to do it. You just have to tell it what to do, and that's through a program that's written with your lighting. Any lighting provider is going to have a special software. You go light it, you type it up, you do the program, and that's where you get the result. It's pretty neat.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I don't think too much about that stuff, and even when I was involved in it, I was like, well, I'm going to take it to this spot, and then magically it's a cop car after the fact,
Yeah.
Well, that's so cool. What kind of preparations do you guys do for 9/11? I mean, because of your vicinity there to the city there, I know that there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ceremonies and remembrances, stuff like that. But What do you do to kind of help influence that or help these guys out?
Um, so just pure basics, me and a bunch of the other guys, excuse me, we just do basic, like, there's a lot of vehicles. I think we have like just in our zone, we have multiple shops, multiple zones. I think our zone, we have like 800 different vehicles. So I'd say about half of that is police
Mm-hmm.
in many different, not just Tahoes and Explorers. There's many, many different types. And generally, if the police are thinking more than a day ahead, because we can't do anything without them, uh, they just kind of start bringing vehicles in, even if it's just roll into the shop, just do a quick, check oil, stuff, basics, right?
Right.
Real basic types. Anyone can do that,
Stuff. Yeah.
basic type stuff. But the more specific stuff uh, starts to happen coming this week. I'll probably have an armored vehicle or two come in, just get a good once over, stuff like that. Lighting checks. Um, Anything major, we actually steer away from for about 2 weeks prior. Like we almost kind of ignore. We've been doing a lot of engines lately. Unfortunately, I did 3 engines last month. I've been back a week. I already got another one I got to do. Uh, but we steer away from large stuff like that because we're trying to keep as much of the fleet going as we can, because no one, God forbid, you just don't know what's going to happen. So most stuff like that, we tell them, listen, for right now, get through the week. Unless the thing blows up, we'll come and get you. But most of it is triage, I guess you could say. Pulling vehicles, that specialty vehicles that sit a lot in like a back lot, getting those up to snuff. I'll have a lot of the SWAT guys will come in. I'll give all their equipment a good once over, all the slide outs. I check all the gun locks. I check all the lighting. I even check tint. I check all the locks.
Wow.
I check a lot of locks because most of our SWAT trucks do a pretty good job of, I mean, if you know what you're looking for, it looks like a police truck. But if you don't know what you're looking for, it just looks like a black truck, Same thing with our vans. I mean, I know what to look for, but your average person might think it's just like a black limo or something. And there's been whoever's problem or fault it was, there's been a few issues of people getting a little handsy with the wrong vehicles, with stuff inside they're not supposed to be touching. So we've been checking a lot of door locks lately.
Oh no.
Yeah, stuff like that. I some of our more specific systems I kind of mentioned before. I give those a really good once over. Probably on Monday, I probably start getting those trucks in one by one, giving them a really good once over. And they also get outside vendors come and actually physically check their software, camera capabilities, make sure cameras are in spec. That's not something I'm going to talk too much about. It's not like I'm under some disclosure, but I don't know where that program is at, and I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's pretty interesting stuff. And, it's not as bad. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world right now. And there's many threats that I know about just from the guys telling me about them. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. And there's always something that they're more directly focused on during this time. And it's particularly interesting. I was actually on site at World Trade for the 20-year anniversary.
Wow.
And that was very interesting. We were kind of posted there. We were just outside of the Secret Service fully closed off zone. But we were cleared in case we had to go on site and fix any equipment. My point in saying that is the years that the president come in or anyone important come in there's a lot going on.
Not messing around, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little quieter this year. They're worried about more outside threats, unfortunately. But to answer your question, the long way around. It's kind of what you would expect. It's more basic type things because we're not doing anything too crazy to, like I said, we're not keeping anything out of service. Our whole point is just get things into service, even if it's for a week. Now we're not going to put anything on the road that's not safe. I'm not saying that, but kind of we'll look, depending on a check engine light, or if there's one gun lock out of 4 that doesn't work, like, okay, we got to order parts, that
Right.
type of stuff.
Sure.
It's usually after that kind of the heavier types. We'll bring the things in that didn't work right, and that's afterwards we'll come in and start doing your more involved type stuff. Um, yeah, I think I answered your question in the longest way possible, but
No,
it's
that's so good
it,
because honestly, you educated me a little bit because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you're doing once overs so that during a celebration, celebration is the right word, during, a ceremony, it looks nice and, everything goes very smooth. But what you're saying is there's actually there's a concern on that anniversary that things might pop off again, and it's more about performance based than optics, and everything needs to be working on all cylinders there. So that's really, I love knowing that there are people like you out there that are putting your effort into it and making sure our boys are safe and our girls.
yeah,
Uh,
and the girls, there's
yeah,
some badasses. Yeah, it like, again, it's more simple than it sounds. I mean, at least in my, because I'm familiar with it, right? But it's more, I don't know what you thought we might be doing, but it's much more generic than you would assume. Other than, like I said, other than specialty equipment. Um, excuse me. Some specialty equipment, if they knew they were having issues with, it gets taken care of. I actually was with some of our vendors on some of that specialty stuff I was mentioning 2 months ago before I even went on vacation. And the reason we do that, and I brought it up to the lieutenants and the captains, get those guys down here now, because we only have 4 of those trucks and they're very important. So get them down here now. If they find anything or we find anything, we have time to address it, as opposed to you coming in a week before freaking out and our hands are tied.
yeah,
There's nothing we can do. So uh, that stuff's gotten a lot better.
yeah.
I think maybe from me being on top of stuff mentally, just kind of, and being good friends with the lieutenant. That I'm gonna choke one night, hopefully cross collar choke or something,
Get it.
good and good fun, on the mats one night. But yeah, it's just it's part of that too, right? Like it's part of that is I've been doing it long enough, right? Now I've also built relationships with the guys that matter, right? I've built a relationship with the regular police officers. I know a lot of them. They're all great people. I think more importantly, what ends up working out and not even realizing it is that I've become friends basically with sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and they're comfortable enough with calling me or asking me questions, or me calling them and saying, "Hey, the engine just came in for so and so. Let's get that thing in so we can knock that thing out." And it ends up being its own thing, right? Like we all trust each other. The guys know, like, hey, they may never have met me before, but they'll say, hey, go to the central shop, ask for Lou, and he'll do it. And that it's funny too, because I've had cops like that I never met. They go, oh, you're Lou.
You're
Yeah,
the infamous Lou.
yeah. And I'm like, oh man, hopefully you heard good things or whatever. But it's funny when someone does that, and I'm just like, well, I'm just Lou. But to them, God knows what they heard, but they go,
Right.
oh, and it's just funny that it's
Yeah.
happened to me quite a few times. And a few trucks that I built. I built one of my biggest projects is an F-350 I built out. It mostly is in the New York side of our facilities between JFK and LaGuardia Airport. So I never see that truck. I work in New Jersey,
Hmm.
but that truck is taken care of at some of our other facilities. But I built that where I work, and after I built that truck, I haven't seen that thing. I've seen that thing maybe once or twice. I'm like kind of like this, like, all right.
Good luck.
And it's fun when they come to get specific things taken care of through me or the lieutenant who's across the street. It's cool to see it. a couple months, 6 months later, and like everything's still good, nothing broke, and they love it. I'm like, all right, I did a good job, So it's pretty cool to see those things, and those are the guys that are usually like, oh, that's Lou,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just kind of cool, It's funny to see.
Lou's the one that made your job possible. That's what that is. That's awesome, man. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit, because now that we know about what you do and the true impact of your aptitude and enthusiasm, we're kind of reflecting because of what this week means, 9/11 coming up. And I think we were talking, everybody has a story, and you kind of have an interesting one. But for me, you couldn't get me farther away from New York or DC or any of those places, right? I'm over here in Washington, you're in New Jersey. And when 9/11 happened, I was 17 years old, and my family was actually over in DC. They were on vacation in DC. I was holding down a job and doing stuff at home, going to school. And it was kind of an interesting situation. I remember, getting a call, because again, you're 3 hours ahead, and getting a call from my mom saying, "Hey, a plane just crashed into the World Trade Center." And I was like, "All right, that's crazy. All right, cool. Keep me posted, I guess. What am I supposed to do about that? I'm over here, right?" And she was trying to explain, "Hey, this is a big deal." And at the time, it didn't connect. And so I got ready for work, and by the time I got to work, the second one had happened. And just hearing everything unfolding, I'll never forget that feeling of what is going on, what is happening right now. There was so much uncertainty. And in the midst of all that uncertainty, what I really remember most is, I worked at a grocery store when I was 17. Like, we're not saddling up and kicking down doors. I'm putting apples on top of apples, right? But even in that role, we had a sense of solidarity. At the time, I was volunteering for a police department, and I would go and do ride-alongs often. I come from a law enforcement family. My mom was in law enforcement her entire career, and so all of those people I was very, very familiar. They were my friends and family. And so having that feeling of, are we safe? But honestly, I can tell you, I wasn't even concerned about our safety, because we're over here in Kitsap County, and we have some of the major Navy bases here. So there's some concern of like, well, are we next? What's going on? But we didn't even have that. I think everybody's like, oh, they messed up, right? Whoever's doing this, they poked the bear, and we're gonna rally. And I'll tell you, I was by myself that entire time, and there were obviously no flights coming back. So my parents actually drove from Washington, D.C. all the way to Washington State.
Wow.
And I don't even remember how long it took them. It took them for freaking ever.
Yeah. Had to be at least 4 days, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Easy. Meanwhile, there's a national disaster going on, and this 17-year-old's playing Halo and not doing his homework, right? But, those good days. But yeah, it just, that type of feeling of, yeah, we've been attacked, but we're okay. We're going to come back. I'll never forget that how it resonated with me. It probably kind of had something to do with the drive to get into law enforcement and the stuff I've done later on in my career. But doing the math, though, what was kind of interesting is, now I was 17. You were 11, 10 or 11, probably.
Yeah, I was in fourth grade, so I was probably 11 years old. Yep, I was probably 11. Yeah, and
what was your story? Because I got to imagine, not just because of your vicinity, but because of your age and able to, understand what's going on, you have a different perspective.
Yeah, so like I said, 11 years old. I was in friggin' like second day, third day of fourth grade elementary, right? We're coloring and doing whatever we're doing. And then it happened, and now I told you beforehand, we had a quick convo, but I am on the East Coast. I'm in Jersey, and where I went to elementary school was literally about 4 blocks off of the Raritan Bay, which is the bay that you can, on a good day, on a clear day, you're staring at New York City. It's not like, crystal clear, but it's there. You can clearly see it. And that morning, I remember my teacher kind of went out to a meeting, came back in, and there was just something going on. Some of the kids might be leaving, and a lot of kids did leave. My parents kept me in. I stayed in. I guess my parents figured, as of right now, as long as the school seems safe, we'll just leave them there for right now. I found this out as I got older. They had some friends and stuff in the city they were a little concerned about because we're that close. I mean, I drive basically just outside the city every day to work. So we live in a suburb of the city.
Right.
So I learned later on that they were concerned about a few people that they knew. So when I left school that day, regular bus, empty, almost empty bus, and where we had to do a turnaround to go back to my house a little further inland, there's a literal U-turn, and it goes probably about 100 feet from the Raritan Bay. And I happened to be on the side that looked at the water, not thinking anything as a kid, and I just remember seeing a huge, plume of smoke, and just kind of remember being like, whoa, wait a minute, like, that doesn't look right, and it's pretty much all I remember is that moment. After that, I don't remember anything. I don't remember getting home, but that really is like a picture in my brain. And, fast forward, this whole area, I mean, you could almost ask anyone. You could almost, in the grocery store, where I go every day, you can almost tap somebody on the shoulder and go, hey, what's your 9/11 story? And they will probably know someone, literally immediate family or very close friend, that has a on the ground story that morning. It's just because of the area we live, we're that close.
Yeah.
And I have 4 uncles that were FDNY at that time, lieutenants and captains. They were all there for months, and they never talked about it. The only time that all 4 of them went back together on the 20-year anniversary was the only time they ever went back, and they never talked about it. They all went. I actually met them there that day because I happened to be there that day. Like I said, we were kind of on standby, and I knew they were going to be there, and they were invited to go past the security perimeter. And that was the only time they ever went back. That was the only time they ever talked about it, was that day. And they still don't talk about it. And I know why, because a lot of the guys I worked with and a lot of guys that have retired, I was fortunate enough to come into the shop I'm at as a young man filled with a bunch of guys that are knocking on the retirement door. And because of the location of my shop outside the Holland Tunnel, it's a hop, skip, and a jump into the city down to Lower Manhattan. And because we provide services for the World Trade Center site, a lot of guys I worked with that have retired, they spent 8 to 9 months going there every day.
Wow.
As mechanics, not anything else. And some of the stories those guys had told were pretty crazy, sad, and it's, I guess, kind of to your point of why we're doing some of this is, like you said, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and the first responders and all the people that died deserve a whole lot of credit, and everything they got, they deserve. I will never take that away from them. But some of the stories my guys told me, being there every day, working the pile, is It's pretty crazy, the things that they told me. And those first-hand accounts are plentiful in this area. And some of the stories that the guys told me just as mechanics were, I could give you chills right now telling you 5 stories right off the top of my head. Uh, so it's an interesting day. Like I said, I was very young, but with so much family involved, uh, people I work with now that I consider friends being involved, hearing these stories, it's still to this day. I mean, I'll go there and visit, just because we're close by and work, and it's the quietest place in all of New York City. Going to those memorial pools, it's really, really, really amazing when you're there. It really is.
I was going to ask what the attitude was from the community, right? What is it? Just a somber attitude, or are people? Because right after there was like this spirit, this American spirit that we all felt. I don't think we've felt it since, but there's a spirit of solidarity. And in today's world where things are so divided, like people have lost that. Um, Being boots on the ground there and being so close, I'm I want to know if that is still palatable, if people can still feel that American spirit on that day.
Yeah, inside the agency, absolutely. There's still a lot of people that I work with that were, some of them were there that day. Um, because it was 24 years ago. So if you're, an office person, you retire at 30 years. So do the math. They were working 5 or 6 years, or so there's a lot of people that were there. Met quite a lot of the police officers that were there have since retired, but um, there's quite a few people that still had a lot of firsthand accounts. So yes, absolutely. Um, you can feel it inside the agency. In the area, it all depends, man. It's been a long time. A lot happens in 24 years or 23 years,
Well, yeah,
unfortunately.
you could be not alive and now be able to drink, right? Like that.
Exactly, which is crazy to think about because I'm only 32 and I'm like, wow, there's kids born after 9/11, and you're right, they can drink and they weren't even alive for it. So
when I
it's
was
been a
doing
long time.
when I was doing the police academy towards the end of my career there, we had police officers that were graduated certified police officers going out into the world that were born after 9/11.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, that's life, right? We're starting to sound old. I mean, and
I
I'm
know.
younger than you, right? I mean, my point in bringing that up though is last year there were protests right outside World Trade Center, right outside the memorial. So um, to your point, there's a lot of people that remember, but there's a lot of people that just, you know, is what it is, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a big worry for. There are quite a few SWAT guys that I know that were like, over my dead body, am I going to let anything happen today around there? So to your point, yes, there's a large amount of people that feel it. There's another large part that they just do what they do, and if they don't care, they don't care.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so it's dwindling. I've been thinking about this because one of our posters came up, or I saw a poster came up with the first responders in it, and it had the shining lights. Actually, you could kind of see in the back there the
Yeah.
beams, and it was one of those never forget posters. And the first thing I said, I'm like, well, a lot of people forgot or are forgetting. So it's very 50-50, unfortunately, with the mood of the area at the time. It's New York City, man. I mean, uh, right along next to it is the West Side Highway, and people are in Ubers and taxis. I mean, people
Goes
are
on.
like, I got shit to do, so they're doing it. And but in that moment, and you're there. If you ever get the opportunity, come over here. I'll take you there. We're going. It is the craziest feeling ever. There's just no way to describe it. And like I said, it's the quietest place in the middle of New York City when you're standing there. It's really, really amazing.
Wow. One day I'll make it over
Yeah.
there. I think
Well,
that's a bucket list thing.
it's it's something to experience. Let me tell you. I'll tell you that. It's definitely something to experience.
Well, that's an incredible story, and it really does tie into what the whole conversation was about. Uh, everybody everybody on every level working together in the same direction to make better outcomes, right? And um, you play a huge part in that. And I knowing you don't like hold that on your shoulders, but I feel like you gotta get that pat on the back every once in a while, because it really is a critical function that most people would overlook. And everybody else in your shop that does the good work, um, keep doing what you're doing, brother. I really appreciate you sharing that today, and just a new perspective on law enforcement. What's next for Lou?
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't nothing on my shoulders. What's next is we're doing the thing, right? We're just trying to do little pieces, keep the train rolling. You know this. We're in Forge together, so uh, I'm looking short term. I'm trying to just keep my next 4 months pretty under wraps. Just keep it in check. And I had a lot of big goals. I still do, but with the wedding, I'm getting married. So with the wedding and stuff coming up, it's in a good way. It's consuming just a lot of energy, time, financials. So I'm just doing short goals. I had big goals with the business and stuff like that. The podcast is just going to be a hobby right now. Things
Yeah,
come out, throw this on, and I kind of look at those things like when I'm ready to give them the energy they deserve. That's when they get the energy they deserve. You know what I mean? And same thing with my business that I have, wherever it might take me. But right now, um, it's just not enough energy. I can't divide my energy into all these things. So short term, keeping it simple, jujitsu, diet, keeping up with all you guys, keeping the wife happy, and we'll stick with those. Those are pretty good goals.
absolutely, man. That's what really life is about. So that's fantastic. Thank you for doing this, brother. I appreciate it. Again, this is going to come out on both the Bold Move podcast and also the Everyday American, which I love the name of your podcast. It is so fitting.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
it's a good listen to, because you and your buddies there's some episodes a while back. I've been listening to that all day. So
That's normal conversation. We just happen to record it and listen for our offshoot podcast, the Bald Americans.
that's right. I was going to say this is a plug for the Bald Americans. Great.
Yeah, that'll be our offshoot, fun, whatever podcast. So,
I think
um,
we might have to get the crew together virtually if we can't do it in person, and throw some whiskey out there and see what happens.
it would be fun to do like once a quarter.
Yeah,
Something fun like that. Definitely,
yeah,
dude.
I love it. All right, man. Well, thank you again, and good luck out there. Be safe, and thank you for what you do.
Yes, sir. Thank you too. I'll talk to you very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. All right, buddy.
Later, man.